You know, there are certain images that sear themselves into a father's soul, like a photograph burned into memory that never fades. What Ethan Hayes saw that Thursday afternoon wasn't just an image, it was the shattering of his world. He opened the kitchen door of his mansion on the outskirts of New York, expecting the smell of a home-cooked meal, expecting to find his wife, Chloe, preparing lunch for their 4-year-old twin sons. Instead, he walked into a scene straight out of a nightmare. Liam and Noah were on the cold marble floor, dressed in filthy, torn pajamas, crying desperately as they tried to eat rotten scraps of food that had been tossed into 2 old dog bowls. Chloe, elegant in her $3,000 designer red dress, stood over them, screaming at the children as if they were animals. "Eat it, you useless things! It's more than you deserve! Stop whimpering like little dogs!" She hadn't noticed Ethan standing in the doorway, observing the devastating scene. The boys were noticeably thinner, with deep, dark circles under their eyes and bruises on their small arms. Their pajamas, which had once been kept impeccable by their nanny, Maria, were now grimy, torn, and reeked of urine and sour food. Ethan's gourmet kitchen, with its imported appliances and Italian marble, had become a chamber of horrors. The contrast was shocking. On the center island were the remnants of a refined lunch Chloe had prepared for herself. Grilled salmon, asparagus, and a salad with expensive organic ingredients. On the cold floor, his 2 most precious jewels ate like abandoned animals. Liam, always the braver of the 2, lifted his eyes, swollen and raw from crying. His small voice, weak and hoarse, whispered, "Stepmother, I can't eat this anymore, it's so bad. Are there bugs in it?" And Ethan saw. He saw that there were indeed larvae squirming in the rotten food. Chloe's response was an even louder scream, accompanied by a kick into the air near Liam's head. "Shut up! Your father isn't here to defend you. You're 2 parasites in this house, 2 deadweights who do nothing but spend my money." Ethan felt his legs go weak and his heart pound. Blood rushed to his head when he realized Chloe had said, "My money." He couldn't believe what he was seeing and hearing. The woman he had chosen to be a mother to his sons, who had sworn before God and 300 guests that she would love them as her own flesh and blood, was treating Liam and Noah worse than street animals. Ethan's heart broke as Noah, the more sensitive of the twins, began to sob even louder, his small body trembling with hunger and cold. "I want my daddy. Why isn't he back yet? Stepmommy said he doesn't like us anymore because we're too ugly and annoying." The words came out choked by sobs, and Ethan noticed the boy had lost so much weight that his ribs were visible beneath the dirty nightshirt. It was at this moment that Chloe noticed Ethan's presence in the doorway. Her face went instantly pale. Her eyes widened in panic, and she quickly tried to compose herself, smoothing her expensive dress and forcing a fake smile. But it was too late. Ethan had seen everything. The dirty, foul-smelling bowls on the floor, the spoiled food crawling with maggots, his sons crying from hunger and fear, and above all, the cruel, calculating coldness in the eyes of the woman he thought he loved. "Ethan, darling, you're back from your trip early." Chloe tried to sound cheerful, but her voice trembled visibly. "I was just..." They were making a terrible mess in the kitchen but Liam interrupted her, dropping the disgusting bowl and running, stumbling toward his father, tripping over his own weak legs. "Daddy, Daddy, she said you don't love us anymore. She said you went away forever, and now we're just her problem." Ethan knelt on the cold marble floor and hugged his 2 boys, immediately feeling how terribly thin they were. How their small bodies trembled, not just from fear, but from cold and weakness. They were ice cold, despite it being a warm afternoon. Noah clutched his father's neck desperately and wept. "Daddy, she locks us in the basement when we cry too much. And yesterday she said we're flawed and ugly like our dead mommy. That's why she died, because she couldn't stand having bad kids." Those words struck Ethan like a knife to the chest. His late wife Isabella, killed in a car accident 2 years ago, had been the sweetest, most loving woman he had ever known. How dare Chloe use her sacred memory to psychologically torture the children? How dare she plant in Liam and Noah's minds that they were to blame for their own mother's death? Ethan hugged his sons tighter, feeling his tears soak the expensive dress shirt he had worn for his business meeting. But in that moment, nothing mattered more than these two helpless beings who depended on him for their survival. "That's not true, my loves. You are perfect, and Mommy loved you more than anything in the world. She didn't die because of you. It was just a sad accident." Chloe, realizing she had been discovered, tried a new approach, her voice shifting to a tone that was both syrupy and manipulative. "Ethan, my love, let me explain properly. The children are lying. You know how imaginative and dramatic they can be. They spilled food on the floor on purpose, and I was just teaching them to clean up their own mess." She moved closer, trying to touch Ethan's arm, but he flinched away instinctively. He wasn't listening to Chloe's lies. He was staring in horror at the bruises on his son's thin arms. Some marks looked like they were from fingers squeezing too hard. Others were scratches. He saw how their clothes had been dirty for days, stained with food, urine, and even dried blood. He could smell the foul odor coming from them, as if they hadn't bathed in a week. The boy's blonde hair, always neatly cut and combed, was now greasy, tangled, and had bits of food stuck in it. "How long has this been happening?" Ethan asked, his voice trembling with restrained rage, still holding his sons. Chloe tried to lie again, now with crocodile tears in her eyes. "Ethan, I swear to God I don't know what you're talking about. They're making up stories because they don't want to obey." But Liam, still clinging to his father as if his life depended on it, whispered in his weak voice, "Since the first time you traveled after the wedding, Daddy. At first she just yelled. Then she started giving us bad food. Then she stopped giving us baths, and now..." He couldn't continue. He just cried harder. Noah finished his brother's sentence. "Now she says we're too much work and that she married you, not us. She said that if we complain, you'll give us away to other people because you don't want us anymore." Ethan looked around the kitchen with new eyes and noticed horrifying details that had previously gone unnoticed. The marble floor was filthy with trampled food scraps. There were broken plates thrown in a corner as if they had been hurled in anger, and the stainless steel trash can was overflowing with the remains of expensive meals that Chloe had clearly eaten alone. Wrappers from imported cheeses, remnants of expensive wines, bones from prime cuts of meat. Ethan opened the imported side-by-side refrigerator and saw it was stocked with gourmet foods, expensive organic fruits, and imported yogurts, everything Chloe liked. But when he opened the pantry where the children's food was kept, he found only a few stale crackers and 2 jars of baby food that had expired months ago. "Did you eat today?" Ethan asked his sons, already knowing the answer would be devastating. Noah shook his little head. "Only that stuff from the floor, Daddy. She said it's special food for disobedient children." Liam, always more observant, added, "Yesterday, she didn't give us anything because we wet the bed, but we did it because we were so scared of the dark in the basement. Daddy, there are strange noises and bugs down there." The revelation about the basement made Ethan's face flush with rage. He knew that basement. It was damp, cold, dark, and filled with pool equipment that made frightening noises. The thought of his young sons locked down there alone in the dark filled him with a murderous fury. "You locked them in the basement?" His voice was dangerously low, controlled, but charged with a fury he had never felt before. Chloe denied it desperately. "No, never. They're making up these terrible stories." But Liam stammered. "She said noisy. Crying children stay in the dark until they learn to behave like people. She said you told her to do it." The lie that Ethan had authorized it was the final straw. He rose slowly, still holding both boys in his arms, and faced Chloe with a look she had never seen before. It was the look of a father discovering that someone had tortured his children. "Chloe, I want you to pack your bags and get out of my house. Now, you have 1 hour." Chloe panicked completely. All the masks fell away, and she showed her true face. "Ethan, you can't do this to me. We're married. I have rights to this house, to your money. I can sue you," she screamed like a madwoman, completely out of control. "These damn children are ruining our marriage. You promised it would just be the two of us." But Ethan was no longer listening. He carried his sons in his arms and walked out of the kitchen, making it clear that the conversation was definitively over. As he climbed the marble staircase toward the twins' room, Ethan could hear Chloe screaming below like a woman possessed. "You'll regret this, Ethan. Those children are manipulative little devils. They lied about everything. I'm a saint for putting up with those two little monsters until now." In the twins' room, Ethan sat on Liam's small bed and held them both, trying to process the magnitude of the betrayal and cruelty he had just discovered. The once cheerful and colorful room now looked abandoned. The expensive toys were gone, clothes were scattered and dirty, and a foul smell hung in the air. "Daddy, you're not going away again, are you?" Liam asked fearfully, clutching his father's shirt. "She always said you were going to travel forever because you were tired of us." Ethan felt his heart break all over again. "Never again, my son. Daddy will never leave you alone again, and she will never, ever hurt you again. I promise." Just then, the doorbell rang. Ethan went downstairs with the boys and found Maria, the nanny who had worked for them for 5 years. Maria immediately noticed the children's deplorable state, and her face filled with horror and guilt. "My God, Mr. Ethan, what happened to the boys?" Maria exclaimed, seeing Liam and Noah dirty, thin, and still trembling with fear. Ethan looked into the nanny's honest eyes and realized she might know something important. Maria's confession was devastating and completed the diabolical puzzle. She explained that for the last 4 months, whenever Ethan traveled, Chloe would dismiss her in the middle of the afternoon, claiming she wanted more intimacy and privacy with the boys to build a motherly bond. Maria would arrive the next morning and always find the children completely different, quiet, frightened, dirty, and desperately hungry. "I should have been more suspicious, Mr. Ethan, but Mrs. Chloe always had an explanation. She'd say they had been playing in the dirt, that they had refused to take a bath, or that they didn't want to eat. I believed her because she seemed so convincing." Maria was crying now, shouldering the weight of her guilt. "The boys tried to tell me things, but they always whispered and looked around fearfully. When I pressed them, they said they couldn't tell secrets." But Maria's final revelation was the most shocking of all. "Mr. Ethan, I found some photos in the trash. Photos of the boys crying, dirty, in humiliating situations. I thought it was an accident, but now..." Ethan felt his blood run cold. Chloe had photographed his children's suffering as a trophy of her cruelty. He hugged Maria and the children, forming a circle of protection and love that Chloe could never completely destroy. But one thing was clear: this was only the beginning. He would uncover the entire truth about the 4 months of hell that Liam and Noah had endured. And Chloe would pay dearly for every tear, every cry of fear, and every night of terror she had inflicted upon his precious sons. 3 days had passed since Ethan threw Chloe out of his house, but the discoveries about the horrors his children had faced were only just beginning. That Sunday morning, as he watched Liam and Noah playing timidly in the garden under Maria's care, Ethan decided he needed to understand how he had been so completely deceived, how a woman could feign love for 2 years and then torture innocent children with such coldness. The answer began to take shape when Ethan remembered the day he met Chloe. It was December 2022, almost a year after Isabella's death. Ethan was in a deep depression, struggling to balance the business empire he had built with the responsibility of raising 2-year-old twin boys alone. Maria helped him tirelessly, but Ethan knew the twins needed a mother figure. On that fateful day, Ethan had walked into the most expensive children's clothing store in New York to buy winter clothes for Liam and Noah. The store, Little Prince's, was frequented only by the city's elite, and its prices were absurd. But Ethan always wanted the best for his sons. It was there that he saw Chloe for the first time, working as a sales associate. What Ethan didn't know was that Chloe had been working at that store for 2 years, meticulously studying every wealthy client who walked in. She had kept a secret notebook with information about New York's most prosperous men, their family situations, and their vulnerabilities. She would discreetly photograph the license plates of luxury cars in the parking lot, jot down names she overheard, and research them later on social media. When she learned from the other salesgirls' gossip about the young millionaire widower who always bought expensive clothes for his twins, she strategically prepared for their meeting. Chloe had bought books on child development, watched hundreds of videos on how to handle small children, and even observed mothers interacting with their kids in the park to mimic their gestures and expressions. She rehearsed affectionate phrases in her mirror at home, practiced genuine smiles, and perfected the art of producing fake tears when needed. She was stunning, with her brown hair perfectly styled in an $800 cut, her skin tanned from expensive aesthetic treatments charged to her credit card, and a smile that seemed to light up the entire store. When Ethan entered, pushing the double stroller with the twins, Chloe immediately knelt to the children's level, using a technique she had seen in videos about winning a child's trust. "How beautiful! Are they twins?" she had asked in a sweet, melodious voice she had rehearsed for weeks. "Hi, little ones. Did you come shopping with Daddy?" Liam and Noah, who were very shy with strangers at that time, immediately felt at ease with her. Chloe played with them for nearly an hour, using specific techniques she had memorized on how to win over 2-year-olds. Exaggerated gestures, high-pitched voices, simple games. During this first encounter, Chloe also studied Ethan meticulously. She noted his $50,000 Rolex watch, his handmade Italian shoes, the way he didn't even look at prices when choosing clothes that cost hundreds of dollars per piece. But mostly, she observed the melancholy in his eyes, the way he lit up when he saw someone being affectionate with his children, the vulnerability of a man desperately seeking to complete his family. "They're very special," Chloe said, as she showed him a $300 navy blue jacket, mentally calculating how many bills she could pay with the commission from that sale. It must be hard raising them alone. When Ethan mentioned he was a widower, Chloe's eyes filled with tears she could produce on command since adolescence, when she discovered that crying helped her get what she wanted from her parents. How tragic. They're so little. They need a mother's love. The words came out with perfect, feigned sincerity. Inside, Chloe was already planning her next steps. That very night, she would spend hours researching everything about Ethan Hayes online, creating fake profiles to investigate his personal life, and beginning to build the perfect persona he was looking for. Over the following months, Ethan returned to the store religiously, always inventing excuses to buy something for the boys. Chloe had instructed the other salesgirls to alert her whenever he appeared. No matter what she was doing, she always greeted him with calculated enthusiasm, remembering not only the children's names, but also specific details she religiously noted in her secret notebook. That Liam preferred blue, that Noah was afraid of clowns, that they both loved animals. Chloe invested money she didn't have in gifts for the boys. She bought small, expensive trinkets with her already maxed-out credit card, seeing each expense as an investment in the millionaire future she planned to secure. She studied Ethan's favorite children's clothing brands, learned about fabrics and quality. She memorized entire catalogs to be able to converse intelligently about children's fashion. What Ethan never imagined was that Chloe had hired a cheap private investigator to look into his life. For $200, she discovered he owned Hayes Construction, one of the three largest in the city, that his fortune was estimated in the hundreds of millions of dollars, and that he lived in an $8 million mansion in a luxury gated community. The investigator also uncovered more personal information, that Ethan suffered from insomnia since his wife's death, that he saw a psychologist twice a week, and that his greatest worry was raising his sons alone. Most importantly, Chloe discovered through an employee at the twins' preschool that Ethan was desperate to find a mother figure for the children. He had consulted with pedagogues, talked to child psychologists, and even considered hiring a live-in governess. He was a completely vulnerable man, ripe for manipulation. Chloe was 32 but lied about her age, claiming to be 28, using forged documents she had bought for $1,000 from a corrupt agent. She was the daughter of a bus driver and a cleaning lady from a small town in Ohio, but she invented a story about deceased parents and a middle-class background. In reality, she had grown up in extreme poverty, sleeping in a two-room house with 6 siblings, wearing donated clothes and regularly going hungry. This miserable childhood had created in her a sick obsession with money and social status. At 15, she was already lying about her age to date older, richer men. At 18, she purposefully got pregnant by a married merchant but lost the baby, and with it the chance for a lifelong alimony. At 20, she tried a modeling career but lacked the height and beauty. At 25, she created fake social media profiles, pretending to be an influencer, but never managed to monetize them properly. Throughout her adult life, Chloe had developed a deep hatred for children. She saw them as obstacles to her plans, as parasites that consumed time and money that could be invested in her. As a teenager, when her parents forced her to care for her younger siblings, she would often pinch them until they cried and lock them in dark closets. Once, she even burned her 3-year-old brother's arm with an iron, claiming it was an accident. She had been involved with 2 other wealthy men before meeting Ethan. The first, a politician, discovered she was selling his personal information to journalists and violently threw her out of his house. The second, an oil tycoon, caught her trying to seduce him while secretly recording to blackmail him later. Both threatened her legally, and Chloe learned she needed to be more subtle in her manipulations. Ethan would be her third and final attempt. She had perfected her techniques of seduction and manipulation, studied behavioral psychology in free online courses, and most importantly, learned to control her natural revulsion for children just long enough to win their trust. The relationship officially began in March 2023. Ethan invited her to dinner at the most expensive restaurant in the city, and Chloe insisted on getting to know Liam and Noah better first. "They are the priority," she said, touching Ethan's arm in a way that seemed affectionate but was calculated. "If they don't accept me, there's no point in us continuing." It was a line she had rehearsed dozens of times, knowing exactly the emotional impact it would have on a single father. The first outing for the 4 of them was carefully orchestrated by Chloe. She chose Central Park because she had observed other families there and knew exactly which activities worked best with 2-year-olds. She arrived with a bag full of expensive educational toys she had bought on a 12-month payment plan, viewing every cent as an investment in her millionaire future. She played for hours with Liam and Noah, pushing them on the swings just as she had seen mothers do. She helped them build sandcastles, following techniques she learned from YouTube videos. And when Noah cried over a scraped knee, she comforted him using tender phrases she had memorized from movies about motherhood. Every gesture was a perfect academic performance. "She's perfect," Ethan commented to Maria that night, the exact reaction Chloe had hoped to provoke. "The boys adored her, and she seems to genuinely care about them." Maria, always cautious and with decades of experience observing people, made a few observations that were completely ignored. "Mr. Ethan, She's very young and you've only known each other a short time. Besides, something in her eyes bothers me when she looks at the boys. But Ethan was in love not just with Chloe, but with the possibility of giving his sons a complete family. He had read dozens of books on child development that emphasized the importance of a mother figure, consulted with pedagogues who reinforced this need and carried an enormous guilt for not being able to be both a father and a mother to Liam and Noah. During their 6 months of dating, Chloe was the perfect girlfriend and future stepmother. She studied the children's schedules, memorized their food preferences, and learned their favorite games. She visited the house on weekends, always bringing gifts for the children that she bought with different credit cards to spread the debt. She helped with dinner, following recipes she researched specifically for young children. She read bedtime stories with theatrical voices she practiced at home. But the performance came at a very high emotional cost for Chloe. She took tranquilizers before each visit to control her natural irritation with children. She rehearsed patience in the mirror and frequently had nightmares where she killed Liam and Noah with her own hands. To motivate herself to continue the charade, she set a photo of Ethan's mansion as her phone's wallpaper and mentally calculated how many years she would have to endure the children before she could secure a multi-million-dollar divorce. Liam and Noah grew genuinely attached to her, first calling her Aunt Chloe, then asking when she would become Mommy Chloe. Every display of affection from the children was like torture for Chloe, who smiled outwardly while fantasizing inwardly about ways to get rid of them permanently. Maria, with her maternal intuition sharpened by decades of experience caring for children, noticed subtle signs that Ethan completely ignored. In June 2023, she made her first serious attempt to warn Ethan. "Mr. Ethan, I know it's not my place, but Mrs. Chloe sometimes looks at the boys in a different way. When she thinks no one is watching, the affection vanishes from her face." Ethan laughed off the concern, interpreting it as natural jealousy. "Maria, you've cared for these children since they were born. It's normal to feel a little jealous when another woman enters their lives. But Chloe loves these kids. That's obvious." In August, Maria tried a more direct approach. She had found Chloe in the children's room during their afternoon nap, holding a pillow over a sleeping Noah, claiming she was just fluffing the cushions. But the expression on Chloe's face at that moment had made Maria's blood run cold. "Mr. Ethan, I need to talk to you about something serious. I think Mrs. Chloe is jealous of the boys. She wants all your attention for herself. Today, I found her doing something strange in their room." But again, Ethan dismissed the concerns as the paranoia of an overprotective nanny. The marriage proposal happened in September 2023 at a 5-star restaurant where Ethan had booked the private room for $15,000. He hired a string quartet, filled the room with 2,000 imported roses, and presented Chloe with a 5-carat engagement ring that cost $200,000. Chloe feigned complete surprise while internally celebrating that her 2 years of meticulous planning were finally paying off. "I accept, but only if Liam and Noah agree," she said with fake tears streaming down her face. Knowing the children were already completely manipulated by her 2 years of forced attention. When Ethan took her home that night and made the official proposal in front of the twins, they jumped for joy, shouting, "Aunt Chloe is going to be our mommy!" Exactly as she had conditioned them to react. The wedding was set for December, just 3 months later. Chloe insisted on a lavish ceremony that cost $150,000, claiming she wanted a celebration worthy of the new family they were forming. In reality, she wanted all of New York to witness her social ascent, for her former colleagues at the store to die of envy, and to have her transformation from a poor salesgirl to a millionaire's wife documented in hundreds of photos and videos. The ceremony was held at the city's most traditional church, with 300 guests from the capital's business and political elite. Chloe wore a wedding dress that cost $50,000, shoes for $15,000, and borrowed jewelry worth more than her entire family would earn in 10 years. Liam and Noah were page boys, carrying the rings on hand-embroidered silk cushions to the altar. When the priest asked if she promised to love and care for Liam and Noah as if they were her own children, Chloe delivered the performance of her life. "I promise to love these boys with all my soul for the rest of my life, to protect them, to educate them, and to be the mother they deserve." The guests were moved. Ethan cried, and even Maria, sitting in the back row, felt momentarily touched by the apparent sincerity. But some people in the audience noticed unsettling details. Chloe's manicurist, who had been doing her nails for 2 years, noticed how her knuckles turned white from clenching the bouquet during the vows. The photographer captured a moment where, while Ethan kissed his sons, Chloe looked at them with an expression that didn't match the joy of the moment. The honeymoon was in Paris, just Ethan and Chloe, while the twins stayed with Maria. During that week, Chloe allowed herself to be genuinely happy for the first time in years. Away from the children, she could just be the millionaire's wife she had always dreamed of being. They stayed in the presidential suite at the Four Seasons, dined at the best restaurants, and bought designer clothes that cost more than Chloe's family's annual salary. But even in Paris, she couldn't stop planning. She called home every day to talk to Liam and Noah, not out of longing, but to maintain the facade and calculate how long she would have to endure the children before she could get pregnant by Ethan and definitively secure her position in the family. During the honeymoon, Chloe also researched inheritance laws, divorce, and child custody online. She discovered that if she could get pregnant quickly and then claimed that Ethan was an absent father who prioritized the children from his first marriage, she could get a generous lifelong alimony in an eventual divorce. The first 3 months of marriage were truly harmonious for Ethan, but a psychological hell for Chloe. Maintaining the facade of a loving mother 24/7 was destroying her mental health. She took 3 tranquilizers a day, drank wine secretly in the bathroom to be able to play with the children, and frequently had panic attacks in the middle of the night. Chloe also began to subtly sabotage Ethan's relationship with Maria, planting seeds of mistrust about the nanny. She would comment that Maria seemed jealous of the new family dynamic, that perhaps it was time to find someone younger and more modern to care for the children, that she wanted to take on more maternal responsibilities without outside interference. But Ethan's first business trip after the wedding would be the turning point Chloe had been waiting for months. It was March 2024. And Ethan needed to spend 5 days in São Paulo supervising a multi-million-dollar construction project. For the first time, Chloe would have the opportunity to show the children who she really was. No witnesses, no masks, no need to feign motherly love. "You're going to have so much fun," Ethan said, kissing his sons on Monday morning, completely oblivious to the hell he was leaving behind. "Mommy Chloe will take good care of you." Chloe waved from the door, holding the boys' hands tighter than necessary. The perfect image of a devoted wife and mother, waiting for the first opportunity in her life not to have to pretend to be someone she wasn't. Let us know where you're watching this story from, a story that touches the hearts of us fathers and mothers so deeply. This fight for justice is just beginning. Ethan didn't sleep for 48 consecutive hours after discovering the hell his sons had endured. On Monday morning, as he watched Liam and Noah playing timidly in the garden, a calculated coldness took hold of him. Chloe had systematically tortured 2 defenseless children. Now she would find out what happens when someone messes with Ethan Hayes' children. His first call was to Dr. Marcus Thorne, the most respected criminal defense attorney in New York. Ethan had known Marcus for 10 years. He had handled some delicate business contracts and was famous for never losing cases involving domestic violence. His reputation was intimidating. Opposing lawyers often sought out-of-court settlements just to avoid facing him. "Dr. Thorne, I need you to completely destroy the life of a woman who tortured my children," Ethan said, in a voice that the lawyer himself found frighteningly controlled. "I don't just want justice. I want total annihilation, legal, financial, social. I want her to disappear." Thorne arrived at the mansion 2 hours later and spent the entire day listening to the accounts of Ethan, Maria, and especially the children themselves. Liam, with his usual courage, managed to recount details that made the experienced lawyer lose his composure several times. Noah, more withdrawn, only whispered fragments between tears, but each word was a stab to the hearts of the adults present. "Ethan, in 25 years of my career, I have rarely seen something so systematic and cruel," Dr. Thorne said, after examining the initial evidence. "This isn't just mistreatment. It's the psychological torture of minors with sadistic refinements. She could get up to 15 years in prison, but we're going to aim for much more than that." But when Ethan mentioned his resources and connections, he made it clear that he wanted a revenge that went beyond criminal justice. "Doctor, I have a net worth of 50 million and influence throughout the city. I want her to get out of prison and have nowhere to live, nowhere to work, nowhere to hide. I want her to carry the mark of what she did for the rest of her life." During the first week, while Dr. Thorne prepared the legal strategy, Ethan began his own investigations. He hired the best security and investigation firm in the country to find out everything about Chloe's true past. What they discovered in the first 5 days was already enough to destroy her twice over. The private investigator, Carlos Mendona, a police veteran with 30 years of experience, returned with a report that made Ethan nauseous. "Mr. Hayes, this woman is a professional predator. Her real name is Larissa Santos Silva, from a small town in Ohio, daughter of an unemployed mechanic and a cleaning lady, but that's just the beginning." Chloe had lied about absolutely everything in her life. She was not an orphan, as she claimed. Her parents were alive and lived in a humble house. She had no higher education, as she had said. She had dropped out of high school in her sophomore year. She was not from a middle-class family, as she had invented. She grew up in extreme poverty, sometimes going days without eating. More shocking still, there was a history of violence against children since her adolescence. At 15, she was accused of breaking her 4-year-old cousin's arm during a game. At 18, a neighbor reported her for leaving her 2-year-old nephew locked alone at home for over 12 hours. At 21, she was fired from a nannying job after the parents found their 3-year-old child tied to a chair, supposedly to teach discipline. "She has a pattern, Mr. Hayes," Carlos explained, showing photos of the old police reports. "She always targets young children, always has excuses ready, always manages to convince the adults that it was an accident or an exaggeration by the victims. She's a psychopath specializing in child abuse." But the discovery that shook Ethan the most was learning that he hadn't been her first victim. Chloe had run variations of the same scam on at least 4 men before him, always targeting wealthy single fathers with young children. In Ohio, she had dated a widowed farmer for 8 months, pretending to love the man's 5-year-old son until she was caught giving the child sleeping pills to keep him calm. In another state, she had been involved with a divorced businessman, winning the trust of his 6-year-old daughter for months until the girl was hospitalized for mysterious food poisoning 3 times in a row. It was only when doctors found traces of cleaning products in the child's blood that the father became suspicious of Chloe. "And there's more, Mr. Hayes," Carlos continued with a grim expression. "I managed to contact the last 2. Both confirmed that she used the exact same tactics. She would feign love for the children, study the family's routine, wait for opportunities to be alone with them, and then begin a gradual process of psychological and physical torture." Ethan felt a rage he had never experienced in his life. Chloe was not just a cruel opportunist. She was a potential serial killer of children who had refined her methods over years. Liam and Noah could have been just her next fatal victims if he hadn't found out in time. During the second week of investigations, Ethan made a discovery that made him want to kill Chloe with his own hands. Rummaging through the belongings she had left behind in her rush to leave the house, he found a notebook hidden inside a pillowcase she had specially sewn to conceal it. The notebook was a detailed diary of all the abuse she had committed against Liam and Noah, written with a clinical coldness that made Ethan vomit several times while reading it. Each page documented a new cruelty. Each entry showed the sadistic pleasure she felt in torturing defenseless children. March 12th. First week alone with the brats. Liam tried to challenge me today when I said he couldn't play in the living room. I decided to teach them a lesson by locking them both in the basement for 3 hours. Their crying is annoying, but knowing they're scared calms me. Ethan comes back tomorrow. I need to make them presentable. March 28th, second test. I served them sour food for lunch and told them that's how disobedient children eat. Noah threw up, which gave me a perfect excuse to punish them more. I'm discovering that I enjoy causing suffering much more than I imagined. April 15th. The two are becoming more submissive. I've found that threatening to tell Ethan they misbehaved works better than physical violence. Children are so easy to manipulate. Why did it take me so long to discover this fun? Ethan had to stop reading several times. The notes revealed that Chloe didn't torture the children out of frustration or anger. She felt genuine, almost sexual, pleasure from their suffering. She was a sadist who had found perfect victims in Liam and Noah. But the most disturbing entry was dated just a week before Ethan discovered everything. Ethan is suspecting something. I need to speed up my timeline. If I can cause a fatal accident with one of the children, I can blame the other. And Ethan will be so broken that he'll be even easier to control. Liam would be easier. He's more impulsive. I can make it look like he fell down the stairs while running. Ethan had to leave the house and drive for 2 hours to calm down after reading that. Chloe had planned to murder one of his sons. She wasn't just an abuser. She was a potential serial killer who saw children as disposable objects for her sadistic amusement. While Ethan dealt with these devastating discoveries, Chloe was not idle. On the Monday following her eviction, she appeared at the mansion's gate accompanied by a cheap lawyer, demanding to talk civilly about the situation. "Ethan, my love, you're making a terrible mistake," Chloe said through the intercom, using the same sweet tone she had used to seduce him years before. "Those children lied about me because they're jealous of our marriage. You know how they've always wanted your attention all to themselves." Ethan, who was expecting exactly this kind of manipulation, recorded the entire conversation. "Chloe, I saw with my own eyes my sons eating off the floor like animals. I saw the bruises, the malnutrition, the terror in their eyes. There is nothing you can say to explain that." "But Ethan, darling," she insisted, now with fake tears in her voice, "I was just trying to raise them to be strong men. You always complain that they're too spoiled, that they need discipline. I was doing it for us, for our future." The manipulation attempt was so pathetic that Ethan almost laughed. "Chloe, you have 5 minutes to get off my property before I call security. The next time you want to speak with me, it will be through our lawyers in court." But Chloe didn't give up easily. Over the next few weeks, she tried several different approaches. She called mutual friends, trying to convince them that Ethan was having a psychotic breakdown after discovering the children had severe behavioral problems. She even went to the local press, trying to sell the story that she was a stepmother wronged by manipulative stepchildren. Unfortunately for her, Ethan had anticipated these attempts. Thorne had already prepared a preemptive communication strategy, alerting all relevant contacts to the real situation and providing enough evidence to debunk any lie Chloe tried to spread. Chloe's most desperate attempt was when she hired a more expensive lawyer and filed a lawsuit, alleging parental alienation on Ethan's part, claiming he was turning the children against her out of jealousy of their marriage. It was a common legal strategy in contentious divorce cases, but completely inappropriate for the actual situation. Dr. Thorne laughed when he received the notice. Ethan, she just dug her own grave. By officially filing the lawsuit, she's given us the legal opportunity to present all the evidence against her in open court. She couldn't have done us a bigger favor. During this period, Ethan was also focused on Liam and Noah's emotional recovery. He hired Dr. Anna Carolina, the best child psychologist on the East Coast, a specialist in trauma and abuse. The sessions revealed the extent of the psychological damage Chloe had inflicted on the children. Mr. Hayes, Dr. Anna Carolina explained after the first few consultations, the trauma Liam and Noah have suffered is deep and complex. Chloe not only abused them physically, she systematically destroyed their trust in adults, planted guilt over their mother's death, and created anxieties that could last for years. Liam was having nightmares every night, waking up screaming that the evil witch was going to come back and hurt them. Noah had regressed emotionally, starting to wet the bed again and refusing to be alone in any room of the house. Both would panic when they heard high heels on the floor, the sound they associated with Chloe arriving to torture them. The good news, the psychologist continued, is that children this age have an incredible capacity for recovery when they receive consistent love and security. But it will take time, probably years, for them to completely overcome this trauma. Ethan completely transformed his routine to be present in his sons' lives. He cancelled all non-essential trips, started working more from home, and dedicated himself entirely to rebuilding the boys' trust and emotional security. Every shy smile, every night slept without nightmares, was a victory against the evil Chloe had planted in their lives. Maria became a fundamental piece, not only as a witness, but as a stabilizing mother figure for the children. She had meticulously noted all her suspicions about Chloe in a personal notebook over the months, creating a detailed record that would be crucial in court. "Mr. Ethan," Maria said, as they reviewed her notes with Dr. Thorne, "I knew something was wrong, but she was so convincing with her explanations. Now I see that every excuse she gave made sense at the time, but together they form a horrifying pattern." Maria's notes showed a gradual escalation of Chloe's cruelty. At first, it was just occasional accidents, children falling, getting hurt, falling ill. Then came the isolation, with Chloe dismissing Maria early to create opportunities to be alone with the children. Finally, the open violence, unexplained bruises, fearful behavior, physical signs of abuse. Meanwhile, the investigations continued to reveal new horrors about Chloe's past. Carlos Mendona discovered that she had been admitted to psychiatric hospitals twice during her adolescence, always after episodes of violence against younger children. She was diagnosed at 16 with antisocial tendencies with a focus on child victims. Carlos reported, "The doctors recommended permanent psychiatric monitoring, but she stopped treatment as soon as she turned 18. Since then, she has never sought professional help again." The most shocking discovery came when Ethan decided to examine the history on Chloe's personal computer, which she had forgotten to take in her hasty escape. The IT technician hired by Ethan found a search history that made all the adults involved physically ill. Chloe had extensively researched how to cause fatal domestic accidents in children, signs of sudden infant death that don't raise suspicion, how long a child can go without food before dying, and most disturbingly, how to fake a child's suicide to look like an accident. She had also frequented online forums specializing in extreme child discipline, where she exchanged experiences with other adults on ways to punish children without leaving evidence. Ethan learned that there was an entire online community of predators who helped each other abuse children more efficiently. Dr. Thorne immediately turned this information over to the FBI, which opened a national investigation into this network of abusers. Chloe had unwittingly led the authorities to a criminal organization much larger than herself. But it was during the third week of investigations that Ethan found the most devastating evidence of all. Hidden in a fake folder on Chloe's computer were dozens of videos and photos she had secretly taken of Liam and Noah during the periods of abuse. The images were of unspeakable cruelty. They showed the children crying in the dark basement, eating off the floor like animals, being systematically humiliated and terrorized. But the most disturbing part was that some photos were time-stamped. Chloe had created a sort of album of suffering, organized chronologically. Ethan had to leave his house for 3 days after seeing these images. He stayed in a hotel alone, processing the magnitude of the evil that had entered his family. When he finally returned, he was transformed. The anger had crystallized into a cold, calculated determination to destroy Chloe so completely that she could never again hurt another child. "Dr. Thorne," Ethan said in a voice the lawyer had never heard before, "this evidence guarantees her criminal conviction, correct?" When the lawyer confirmed, Ethan continued, "Then now we move to phase 2. I want her to get out of prison and find she has no life to return to. I want her to spend the rest of her existence paying for every tear she caused my sons." The legal justice machine was working perfectly, but Ethan wanted more. He had discovered that Chloe was not just a criminal. She was a monster who had refined the art of torturing children over years. Now she would experience what it means to be completely defenseless, vulnerable, and without hope. The final plan was taking shape and would be executed so devastatingly that Chloe would never recover. Her destruction would be complete, permanent, and would serve as an example to any other predator who thought of harming innocent children. Ethan looked out the window and saw Liam trying to teach Noah how to ride a bike, with Maria lovingly supervising. His sons were beginning to smile again, beginning to trust again, and Chloe would pay dearly for every day of happiness she had stolen from them. The revenge would be perfect, legal, and permanent. Chloe had made the biggest mistake of her life when she decided to torture the sons of Ethan Hayes. 4 months after throwing Chloe out of his house, Ethan was finally ready to execute the final phase of his revenge. The criminal proceedings were moving forward, but not without obstacles. Chloe had hired a more experienced lawyer who was questioning some of the evidence. Dr. Thorne warned Ethan that the legal battle would be longer and more complex than initially anticipated. "Ethan, she's trying to claim you planted the evidence out of jealousy," Dr. Thorne explained during a tense meeting in his office. "Her lawyer is arguing that a man with your resources could easily fabricate proof. We'll need to be very careful." Ethan felt a frustration he hadn't expected. After months of believing that justice would be swift and definitive, discovering that Chloe still had a chance to escape made him physically ill. He spent 3 nights sleepless, obsessed with the possibility that she might never properly pay for what she did to Liam and Noah. It was during one of these sleepless nights that Ethan received an unexpected call. It was Marcos Santana, an investigative journalist who had been following the case through contacts in the police force. Marcos was known for his reports on crimes against children and wanted to do a special feature on Chloe's case. "Mr. Hayes, I believe I can help," Marcos said over the phone. "This isn't just about your case. I've discovered there are at least 8 women in situations similar to Chloe's operating in this region. Your ex-wife is part of an informal network of scammers who specialize in deceiving single fathers. Marcos's proposal was to do a series of investigative reports that would include Chloe's case. but as part of a larger social problem. Ethan initially hesitated. Publicly exposing his children was something that deeply troubled him. But when Liam and Noah continued to have nightmares and setbacks in their recovery, he realized that perhaps controlled exposure could be therapeutic. "Is Daddy sad?" Liam asked one morning after another night Ethan couldn't sleep. "Do you stay awake like us when you have nightmares?" Ethan knelt to his son's level, and for the first time since discovering the abuse, allowed his own emotions to show. "Yes, my son. Daddy is scared too. Sometimes scared that Aunt Chloe won't be punished as she should be." "But Daddy," Noah said in his still, fragile voice, "Dr. Anna said that sometimes bad things happen to teach us how to protect other people. Maybe we can help other kids by telling our story." The innocent wisdom of his boys touched Ethan deeply. He decided to accept Marcos's proposal, but with strict conditions. The children would be interviewed only once, with psychological support present, and they would have full control over what they wanted to say or not say. The preparation for the report took weeks. Marcos discovered that Chloe was not sitting idly by. She had created fake social media profiles, trying to destroy Ethan's reputation by spreading lies about him being an abusive father who used his influence to persecute an innocent ex-wife. Worse, Chloe had approached other men Ethan knew professionally, trying to convince them he was unbalanced and dangerous. Some businessmen began to question whether they really wanted to maintain business with someone involved in so much family drama. "Ethan, you need to be prepared," Dr. Thorne warned. "She's trying to flip the narrative. If we don't control this soon, it could affect not only the criminal case, but your entire personal and professional life." The investigative report aired on a Thursday night, but it wasn't the devastating expose Ethan had imagined. Marcos had done an ethical and careful job, focusing more on the social problem of scammers specializing in vulnerable families than on a personal vendetta against Chloe. The impact was significant, but gradual. There was no instant national explosion. Instead, the report generated important discussions about child protection and led other victims of similar scams to come forward. 5 men from different cities came forward, reporting similar experiences with other women. Chloe tried to minimize the damage, giving interviews to smaller outlets, maintaining her version of being a misunderstood stepmother. For a few weeks, it seemed she might succeed in creating enough doubt about her guilt. But it was during this period of uncertainty that the turning point Ethan least expected occurred. Liam and Noah, who had watched the report with Dr. Anna Carolina, spontaneously decided they wanted to record a video telling their own version of the story. "Daddy, Aunt Chloe is telling lies about you on television," Liam said, with a determination impressive for his 4 years. "We want to tell the truth so people know you protected us." Dr. Anna Carolina was initially against the idea, fearing it would re-traumatize the children. But after several preparatory sessions, she realized that talking about the trauma was genuinely therapeutic for the boys. They wanted to have an active voice in their own justice. The video was recorded in Dr. Anna Carolina's office, with her present the entire time. It wasn't a professional production, just a simple camera and 2 brave children telling their truth. "My name is Liam, and this is my brother, Noah," the boy began, holding his brother's hand. "Aunt Chloe was very mean to us when Daddy wasn't here. She made us eat on the floor like puppies and said Daddy didn't like us anymore." Noah, always shyer, managed to speak only a few sentences. "She put us in the dark when we cried and said it was our fault that Mommy died. But it's not true. Dr. Anna explained that Mommy loves us and is watching over us from heaven." The video was posted on the YouTube channel Ethan had created to document the boy's recovery. It didn't go viral instantly as he had hoped. It took almost a month to gain significant traction, but when it finally started being shared, the impact was devastating for Chloe. The difference was that this time, the story came directly from the victims. There was no possibility of alleging manipulation or fabrication. It was two small children, visibly traumatized but incredibly brave, telling their own experience with a sincerity no adult could fake. The video eventually reached 2 million views and was shared by dozens of influencers and journalists. But the most important impact was on the legal process. The judge presiding over the case watched the children's testimony and decided to expedite the trial. Chloe tried one last desperate strategy, claiming she was suffering systematic persecution, and sought a restraining order against Ethan, stating that he was using his influence and money to unjustly destroy her life. For 2 agonizing weeks, Ethan had to deal with the real possibility of being legally barred from continuing to expose the case. Those were the 2 most difficult weeks of the entire process. He found himself questioning if he had made the right choice by publicly exposing his sons. "Maybe I should have kept everything private," Ethan confessed to Maria one night, as he watched Liam have another nightmare. "Maybe I've caused them more trauma with all this exposure." "Mr. Ethan," Maria replied with her decades of practical wisdom, "these children are growing up knowing they were heard, protected, and that their pain served a greater purpose. That will give them strength for the rest of their lives." Chloe's restraining order was denied when the judge reviewed all the evidence and realized she was trying to use the legal system to escape the consequences of her own crimes. But the process had taken its emotional toll on Ethan. He realized that revenge, even when just, had personal costs he hadn't anticipated. The trial finally took place 8 months after the initial discovery. Chloe was sentenced to 10 years in prison, less than Ethan had hoped for, but still a significant victory. What mattered most was that during the trial, 3 other victims of Chloe came forward, ensuring that her conviction was based on a proven pattern of behavior, not just an isolated case. But the real transformation in Ethan's life didn't come from Chloe's conviction. It came from an unexpected source. During the process, he met Marina Santos, a psychologist specializing in child trauma, who had been called as an expert witness. Marina had been impressed, not only with Ethan's courage in protecting his sons, but with his genuine dedication to their recovery. Their relationship grew slowly over the course of a year. Ethan was traumatized by his experience with Chloe and initially resisted the idea of letting another woman get close to his children. Marina perfectly understood these reservations and never pushed for closeness with the kids. "Ethan, I know you're afraid," Marina said during one of their first personal conversations. "What Chloe did broke your trust in a profound way. You don't have to trust me immediately. Let time prove who I really am." The process was gradual and sometimes frustrating. Ethan found himself analyzing every gesture Marina made with the children, looking for signs of falsity that didn't exist. Liam and Noah liked her from the beginning, but it took Ethan almost 2 years to allow her to become more than a family friend. The children's recovery was not linear, as Ethan had initially hoped. There were setbacks, difficult nights, and moments when they seemed to be regressing emotionally. Noah developed such severe separation anxiety that Ethan had to cancel all work trips for nearly a year. Liam, on the other hand, became hyperprotective of his brother and extremely distrustful of unfamiliar women. For months, he would interrogate any woman who interacted with them, asking direct questions about their intentions that made the adults uncomfortable. "Are you going to hurt my brother if my dad travels?" Liam asked Marina the second time they met. The question broke her heart, but she answered with the honesty the child deserved. "Liam, I understand why you're worried. A bad person hurt you, and you want to protect your brother. I promise I will never hurt you, but you don't have to believe my words right now. You can watch my actions and decide for yourself if I am trustworthy." This honesty began to build a real foundation of trust. Over months, Marina proved through consistent actions that her intentions were genuine. She never tried to replace the memory of the children's biological mother, never forced intimacy, and never stayed alone with them until everyone felt completely safe. Ethan and Marina's wedding took place 3 years after Chloe's conviction. It was a small, family-focused ceremony, with Liam and Noah playing an active role in deciding when and how the event would happen. "Daddy, now we have a mommy who really loves us," Noah said on the wedding day, now 7 years old and much more confident. "Marina would never lie to us, right?" "Never, my son," Ethan replied, finally feeling that his family was truly complete and secure. While Ethan was rebuilding his life, Chloe was facing the consequences of her choices in prison. The years were not easy for her. Criminals who hurt children are despised even among other inmates. She spent most of her sentence in solitary confinement for her own safety. When she was finally released, after serving 8 years with a reduction for good behavior, Chloe discovered that the world had changed. Her story was still easily found on the internet. Getting a job was nearly impossible. Employers would do online searches and quickly discover her past. She returned to Ohio, but even her own family rejected her. Her parents, ashamed by the public revelations, had moved to another city and changed their last name. Chloe found herself alone, working sporadic and demeaning jobs, always being fired when her true identity was discovered. There was no grand revenge or cinematic destruction, just an empty, lonely life with no prospects. Chloe didn't become a national symbol of evil, but rather a broken woman who had lost any chance of happiness or personal fulfillment due to her own cruel choices. At 45, she lived alone in a rented room on the outskirts of a small town, supporting herself with occasional cleaning jobs. She had no friends, no family, no social life of any kind. She would forever carry the mark of what she had done, but in a more subtle and permanent way than Ethan had originally imagined. Meanwhile, Liam and Noah flourished. At 8 years old, they were resilient children who had learned to turn trauma into strength. Liam became a brave boy who defended other kids at school from bullying. Noah channeled his sensitivity into art, creating drawings and paintings that told stories of overcoming adversity. Ethan never established a national institute. That had been a grandiose fantasy during his most enraged moments. Instead, he and Marina started a local support group for parents who had been through similar situations. It was smaller, more personal, but genuinely helpful to the families who needed it. "Daddy, are you still sad when you think about the mean auntie?" Liam asked one night, now 9 years old. Ethan thought carefully before answering. "Sometimes I'm sad about the time we lost to fear and pain, but I'm also proud of how you've become strong and kind boys. The sadness taught us to value the happy moments even more, and now we have a lot of happy moments." Noah completed the thought, hugging his father. Ethan smiled, looking at Marina, who was setting the dinner table and humming softly. His revenge against Chloe had been different from what he had imagined. Not a spectacular destruction, but something deeper and more lasting. She had lost any chance of happiness, while he had found an even stronger and more united family. Love hadn't magically conquered evil. It had grown in spite of it, through pain, patience, and the daily choice to build something better on the ruins Chloe had tried to create. Years later, when Liam and Noah were teenagers, they sometimes asked about Chloe. Ethan always answered with honesty. She had made bad choices that led her to an empty and lonely life, but they had chosen to use their experience to become better people. That was true justice, not a dramatic revenge, but the patient construction of a full life upon the ashes of the cruelty that someone had tried to plant in their family.